Bonjour, habari za leo. My name is Jakudu Guya.
My name is Jahan Biku.
My name is Rashik Fatah. I'm the director of Our Future Cities. On behalf of ICLEI Africa, the African Centre for Cities, Our Future Cities and partners, I'm excited to welcome all of you to the Rise Africa 2021 Action Festival.
Rise Africa has been growing as a platform of thinkers, doers and enablers, committed to inspiring action for sustainable cities.
Rise Africa is about building active networks across academia, government, private sector, civil society, and the arts.
Our entry point is based not on articulating problems, followed by proposing solutions, but rather on celebrating our cities as places of innovation and culture, while asking what more we can do to make them more sustainable, inclusive, and vibrant.
This festival is hosting 46 sessions from across 16 countries in Africa and the world. Every session aims to share new ideas, showcase ongoing actions, and launch new initiatives by bringing participants together to chart a new route forward.
We hope that the festival program will inspire you to commit to one or more specific actions that you or your organization will take on. As the session closes, you'll be redirected to a survey in which you can articulate these actions. We will follow up on these committed actions throughout the year and offer resources, connections, and support. In this way, we are testing the idea that events can galvanize action, and we hope that you will join us in this effort.
Beyond this session, there are many ways to take part in the festival.
Register for further sessions.
Vote for your favorites in the photo competition.
Watch a variety of inspiring video provocations.
Test your knowledge of African cities from our daily quiz.
And listen and dance to the Rise Africa 2021 playlist.
We hope that you will make all attempts to reach out to new people and build lasting connections.
Before we begin, it is important to note that this session is being recorded and that by participating, you are consenting to be recorded. All recordings will be available on the program page after the festival.
Creative expression is vital for creating new futures for our cities. So we invite you to enter the session in the spirit of creativity and dreaming.
Look at how far you have come. Look at how far you are going, from the rubbles of the city to royalty. Yes, you are the stuff that legends are made from. We come from Abantu of the crackling fire, Abantu that come alive around the burning, Abantu that set the air alight with blazing voices, Abantu that chanted for freedom from the front lines, spreading struggle songs from yesteryears like a wildfire, igniting all the way up to touch the skies. Harambe! I come from the urban legends who placed their lives on those lines. I want to be heard. I want our stories to be told. I want our songs to be sung by the children. Go on then. Tell the children that they are the stuff that legends are made from. You are. Yes, you are the stuff that legends are made from.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session on Rise Africa Action Festival. We're excited to have you. Today's session is entitled, What Does Circular Economy Look Like in Practice in Africa? And we'll be focusing on business initiatives. We look forward to having an interesting and exciting time with you, and we hope that by the time you leave here, you have some actions and learnings that you pick from the session. So to celebrate the diversified group we have in here, I'd like us to do a quick highs and welcomes and welcome each other to this session. So if you could type in your country and how you say hi or welcome in your local dialect in the chat so that we can see the different people in the room. We'll be excited to see that. For example, I am Deborah Nate and I'm from Ghana, and my local dialect is Adangme, and we don't have hi in Dangme, we have welcome, which we say mohe. So I would say Mohe from Ghana. If you could type that in the chat. So your country and how you say hi or welcome in your local dialect in the chat. Okay, hi Pekka, Finland. Okay, while we do that, I'll introduce myself and my co-host will do likewise, or we'll wait for the others to say hi and their welcomes in the chat. I am Deborah Nati, like I've already said, from Footprints Africa. Since we are speaking about circular economy, I would like to share one circular economy initiative that I'm excited or I'm passionate about, and the reason why I am passionate about that company, and my co-host Joanna will do likewise. So for me, we've been collecting circular economy cases, and we came across Sabon Sake. And Sabon Sake is an initiative in Ghana working in rural communities, and they produce regenerative soil solutions to improve to improve farm soils and reverse infertile and degraded farm soils. This company really inspires me because it is being led by a young lady who completed school and decided to do something to support the farming sector. And she's not working in urban areas, but she's working in rural communities, going to the root of the situation. That inspires me because I am personally passionate about rural community development. Hi, Joe. Do you want to introduce yourself and share with us the company that inspires you?
Thanks, Debs. So keeping it nice and practical, I'm going to talk about a company that I don't fully understand, so it's a little bit risky on that front, but it's an organization called BioTree, and it's run by a man in Togo, and they use microbiology solutions for natural fertilizers for the soil, enhance the soil and enhance the ability of the plants to absorb nutrients from the soil, and it also acts as a natural pesticide. And what's amazing about this guy is that he's a microbiologist himself, and he's really, in Togo, they don't have the laboratories he needs. He really needs to enhance what he referred to as his microbe library. So kind of a library of microbes that he can use. And so he's had to be incredibly resourceful about how he does that. And he's worked with libraries in Morocco and I believe in Burkina Faso. But it's an amazing example of a very natural nature-based solution. So I'm very excited about the work that he's doing, even though I don't quite understand it.
Sure. Hi, Joe. I see a lot of interesting people in the chat, people from France. And I see Matthew, who I've been looking for a long time. He works with Kudoti. So hi, Matthew. I'm definitely going to get in touch after this session. But just as we've done, I see people already introducing where they're joining us from and their company names. So as we add in our greetings, can we also add in where we are joining from and the companies that we are joining from? So I see Rose from Uganda. Hi, Rose. Okay, Rose, I can't mention that. Pardon me. If you would like to unmute and say you're welcome. I see Antonella from, who is an Italian. All right. All right, Yasmin, you're all welcome, and we are excited to have you all here. So we'll go ahead and jump into the session.
All right. So just to start things off, it would be good to understand whether everyone in the group has heard of circular economy's key elements. So just going to launch a little poll, and it will impact a little how we describe the elements, how much detail we go into describing them. So if the technical team are ready to launch the poll, and let me know when you've done that. So just a simple answer for everyone. Have you heard of circular economy's key elements? And if so, fantastic. Which of those elements do you think is the most important? So it'd be great if everyone could have a think about that and share what their thoughts are. In the diagram that we're showing right now, there's 3 in the middle, and then there's 5 around the edge. So the 3 in the middle are seen as the core elements, and then the 5 around the edge are the enabling elements. And we, in this session, are just going to focus on the 3 core elements with the examples we're going to give, and we're going to make it really practical so you can see how these are being interpreted in the African continent. We will also introduce the work that we're doing, but we'll intersperse that. We want to make it very interactive and very dynamic. So we'll intersperse the examples with some introductions to some of the things that we are currently working on. So how are we doing on the poll? Have we had a chance to answer by now?
We have 19 people answering to
Let's wrap
20 to question 1. Hi, Joe, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We have 20 people who've answered to question 1, but we have about 30 people on the call. If we could get to 25.
All right.
Okay, 26 of 30 voted.
Let's do it. Let's
27. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll in 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's done.
So that's
share the
poll.
Yeah. I'm sharing the results.
People have heard of circular economy's key elements. That's great. So we don't need to worry about going into too much of the technicalities. And the most important that people have voted for is use waste as a resource, which is very, very interesting for the content we're going to talk about. And I think all of us who've been involved in the work that we've been doing on circular economy in Africa have definitely noticed that that is the main strategy that is being used. And the second one that's being voted for, so 26% of people have voted for rethink the business model. And then 15% design for the future. No one thinks team up to create joint value. So no one wants to be a team here. All right, so we're solo players. Okay. Let's go on to the next part.
Right.
So as I mentioned, we're going to focus on the 3 core areas. So let's prioritize regenerative resources, stretch the lifetime, and preserve and extend what's already made, and use waste as a resource, which seems to be the popular one. So hopefully that'll please a few people here. So let's dive in.
Right. Thanks so much. Since a lot of people have heard, we wouldn't speak so much about these elements. But then the first we want to talk about is prioritizing regenerative resources. And when we talk about prioritizing regenerative resources, we're talking about resources that are renewable, they're reusable, and they are not toxic to the environment. In as much as we want these materials to be in this format, we also want to be careful that materials are being used efficiently to avoid any rebound effects. So with that being said, we are going to go in and discuss one case study. So this is a construction case study, and the company is located in Kenya. But this company had a challenge, and they noticed that the cost of building materials in Kenya is very expensive. And also, but on the flip side, there is the disposal of agricultural waste is very poor and not being done well. But there is also a deficit, housing deficit in the country. So they decided to use what they have to provide the solutions that provide solutions around circular economy. So some possible solutions that we have pulled out from their case study is recycle materials from old buildings, or could they use locally available timber from plantains to stimulate agroforestry, or could they lobby the government to reduce import duties so they could get building materials, or they could import sustainable materials? And do you have any other solution you think would be best? Thinking about prioritizing regenerative resources. So we are going to go into breakout rooms and we'll get our hands into this case study. And the instruction is that you pick a solution for the challenge that this company has noticed, which is now your company. And you pick a solution and tell us why you're picking the solution. You can pick more than one solution if you think they would work hand in hand on how best you think they are able to work. And you come back here and you share with us what you find as the best solution to the challenge. Remember, there is housing deficit, the cost of building materials are high, and they've also seen that agricultural waste is not being disposed the right way. So if you understand the instruction, could you give me a thumbs up? Just so I'm sure that you're all ready to go into the breakout rooms. All right, I see a few thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. So we would also share a Word document where you can type in as you work and come back to discuss when you're ready. So if our breakout rooms are ready, could we launch them? Okay, Louise, I think we have majority of them. Yeah.
All right, Deb, so you ready to tell them
Oh,
the solution that the company chose?
yes, you're all welcome. So I'll call on some few people, like I've already mentioned. I see Antonella smiling at the camera. And I know you started a nice discussion. So do you want to share with us which solution you picked and the reason? While the others can type it in the chat, and I'll call on other people to share. So hi, Antonella.
Okay, I can try to summarize what we said. It was very short, so we didn't manage really to get into much more than that, but we were taking the first challenge, so high cost of building materials and possible solution for disposal of agricultural waste. So we put as option number one, recycling materials from old buildings, but also reusing existing buildings as much as possible, because any operation that implies recycling or reusing, it's energy intensive, so requires a lot of energy inputs, and therefore then other costs, both environmentally and economically. It is possible construction industry is looking in some countries at opportunities to recover as much as possible materials from existing buildings, but also to introduce design for disassembly principles which allow to have an easier task at the end of the process when we want to extract the elements from an existing building and reuse them. So that goes under material banking and material passports that sound quite complex, but they are less so when they are built into the design phase and the planning of the building. So these are all criteria and strategies that allow us then to know better how many elements in a building there are that can be recovered and reused. And then we mentioned briefly the possibility to recycle and reconstitute materials as well from existing buildings that need to be demolished.
Okay.
I'd love to quickly call, and I think it was Louise who, maybe because the time was running short at the end of our session, came up with a pretty wild but also very interesting idea. I think it was Louise in our group. Louise, in a few words, would you mind sharing what you talked about at the end?
We thought of other options. That's what we preferred. And would it be possible that we could grow a structure using trees? So we would collect manure and soil and excess agricultural waste, somehow compact them into bricks or some kind of molded walls. And then we could make the supporting structure organic. And so maybe we could grow trees somehow as well, and at different levels, different generations might use different parts of the tree.
So that's very fun. Yeah. Debs, do you want to share with everyone what, in fact, our construction company in Kenya did decide to do? I don't think anyone talked about the option that they ended up going for.
Yeah, that's interesting what Louise just brought up. So this is Microtal we've been speaking about, and Microtal is in Kenya. So they decided to produce locally manufactured building materials using agricultural waste, and such as maize cobs, coffee husks, and they were using mycelium to bind the waste materials to produce the board that you can see in the photo. So what is interesting is they didn't want to export, they didn't want to use new materials. They were trying to use the waste that was already there, the agricultural waste, use it wisely to produce those boards, which were going to be fireproof also. That is the interesting solution that Michael Tao brought about. And it is interesting. Okay, I would like to ask Joe, what did you think was exciting about this case study? Because coming up with such a solution, and you realize that people were not easily buying into the solution because they felt, oh, this is the maize cobs that we use. What if fire goes into it?
So I think the thing that I found very interesting about this is how clever nature is. I'd heard about this solution for packaging materials in America. So it's amazing that this entrepreneur's been able to turn it into a construction material. But what's incredible is that there's a natural chemical, and I am not a material scientist, but there's a natural chemical in the mycelium that is actually prevents rot and prevents pests. And so it's actually a very durable material. I would have thought of it being quite weak, but because of the natural properties that it has, it's very durable. So I think that's an incredible natural innovation that he's been able to come up with using waste as a resource and prioritizing regenerative resources.
I would have loved to hear what the team or everyone here thinks about this solution. You can type in your how you feel about it in the chat. Okay, hi, Louise is saying something there. It'll be interesting to know what we think about it. So, Joanna, do you want to talk about the second?
Before we dive into the second, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are and why we exist and why we're doing this work. So, Footprint Africa is a nonprofit. Our vision is, I imagine, very similar to others in this group, that we would love to live in an inclusive, regenerative world, so no one is left behind, and there's do no harm. And the approach that we're taking is to look at businesses. We do believe that business can be a force for good. We do believe that we can move away from the sort of sustainability angle of do less bad to actually how can we do net good. So what we do is predominantly working in Ghana. We run programs to support companies in catering and waste management to improve their social and environmental performance. And we do so through the B Corp framework. So B Corp is a certification for businesses that take people, profit, planet into equal measure. And then alongside that, we undertake research. And that's what we are going to tell you a little bit more about now, because we strongly believe that there are incredible, as we're showing you, there are incredible examples out there of businesses innovating across the continent. And we want to show best practice from across the continent. So the companies that we're working with in Ghana, they don't want to see examples from Europe and America. They want to see examples that they can recognize from a context that they can relate to. And so we've been collecting case studies from across the continent. And so maybe you go to the next slide, we can share a little bit about the research that we've been doing. So we have been, we have a quite ambitious goal to collect 500 case studies from across Africa of circular economy. And there are a few reasons that we're doing this. Number one, we want to show the incredible work that's already happening on the continent. Circular economy is not a new concept. It's not new to Africa. It's not something that people from Europe or America can bring to Africa, but it's something that the rest of the world can learn a huge amount from. And so we want to create a bigger platform for the existing examples that we're coming across in order to inspire aspiring business owners and entrepreneurs to see how they can adopt different practices and how this can make a difference for their business. And we also want to influence the global debate on circular economy, which seems to be heavily dominated by European and American examples and contexts, and show what an opportunity it has to make a huge difference on the African continent, and also what others can learn from Africa. So that's the work we're doing. We are currently collecting those 500 case studies. We're also doing a piece of deeper dive research to understand what how circular businesses are and what the impact of that circularity is, because we need more data to really evidence and inspire greater adoption of this. And we'll also then start undertaking training and coaching activities. And we've been working with the African Circular Economy Network who's a fantastic partner. So if you're not aware of them, please do look them up. And we've also been working with Circle Economy to upload these cases onto their knowledge hub so that these cases can have the most global reach possible. So that is all for this one. I think it's time for us to dive, I'm sure you've heard enough of me talking, can dive into another element, which is around stretching the lifetime. So what does that mean? So currently, our current economic model, as everyone knows, is linear, and it's incredibly wasteful. Recycling seems to be the bandwagon that a lot of people are jumping on in terms of, here's a great way to mitigate that. But actually, it's a last resort solution. What we need to do before we even consider recycling is thinking about how we maintain products in use. So we don't just buy a new one because a new one came out. We don't just buy something new because there's a crack on the screen. We try and get things repaired. We try and upgrade them so that we keep those materials in use in the highest possible value for as much as possible. And if we are needing to give it a second life, then we're making sure that it stays in its highest possible value. So next slide, let's talk about a challenge that one of the companies that we've been looking at has tried to address. So let's go to Tanzania. Let's think about safe drinking water. There is an issue of a lack of access. It affects those who are most vulnerable the most. The glory of plastics is that it has been able to deliver safe drinking water to many, many communities. It's a wonderful material. However, those communities often are not equipped to process that material. So we need to rethink, how do we address this issue of such a high use of plastics in delivering clean water to consumers and then staying and being stuck in those communities? And how do we address the fact that there is a lack of infrastructure for this? So there's a company that we know of in Tanzania. First, we're going to ask you to consider the problem and consider the potential solutions, and then we can share a bit about what the solution is that they've adopted, and you can consider whether that's a strong solution. So the possible solutions that we've come up with: installing taps and piping water to every home, community scale water filtration devices, digging boreholes and selling the water, so that's how you can create your revenue stream, setting up bottle-to-bottle plastic recycling facility. And the challenge was that in many countries that will require a change in legislation, because currently recycled plastics are not considered to be eligible for food grade packaging. And maybe there are other options that we have not considered. So we would love for you all to get into your groups, talk these things through, challenge each other, think about unintended consequences of all the different solutions. And hopefully those groups can be set up now. And if anyone has any questions, then ask now.
Yeah, hi Joanna, Suzanne here, South Africa. Hi, I just wanted to ascertain, you're saying it is the lack of access to safe water. So is there water? It's just not safe. So my question would be, what makes that water unsafe? That is the first thing I'd like to know.
Well, I think it's a great thing to discuss in the groups. So I think giving away slightly a way of discussing this is that in different contexts, it will depend. So in some areas of Tanzania, they have abundant water. In some, they have, they have issues of drought. So there will be an issue of lack of access to water itself, and also lack of access to water that maybe is potable for the consumers. Hope that answers your question. So I'm going to encourage everyone to dive into groups and carry on discussing this and discussing some of the nuances of it in the groups that there are. So can you set up the breakout rooms? Welcome back, everyone. We've lost the presentation.
That's okay.
Great. So we had some really interesting ideas and conversations going on in the group that I was fortunate enough to be in. I'd love to hear if anyone could share anything that surprised them that anyone shared in their breakout room. If someone's brave enough to unmute and share something that they were surprised by.
I was surprised and so grateful for the link to the spirits and to the elements, that water, air, earth, fire And when we have this clean water, we can maybe take it from the air and put it into an earthen cup and on the fire and make a cup of tea and share it.
Yeah, definitely very interesting thinking about the deeper connection with some of these elements. So anyone else? I'd love to hear from another group as well. What did you share? What solution did you choose? It'd be great if everyone would put in the chat which solution they chose. Maybe I'll call on someone who's... Suzanne, you had a question before. Did you have your question answered?
No, look, I struggled to actually even discuss a solution before. I really don't know what is the source of the problem. So, you know, in our discussion that we had, we was like, we want to first sit down with the community, find out exactly what makes the water unsafe. And you know what Alex was also saying is there's too much emphasis at throwing technology at people or, you know, appointing consultants. Now I'm a consultant myself, so I like to be appointed, but still, you know, the emotional responsibility needs to lie with the communities. And instead of just dishing things out to people, and that seems to be a very African thing, you know, instead of teaching people, you know, local self-reliance and really to take emotional responsibility to find their own solutions, it's almost like we throw things at them as part of a development aid project, and a lot of them have very short lifespans. Things fall into disarray very quickly because people don't have to stretch themselves from their side. And I think that's the first thing I would like to do, try to find something that really has you come to the party element as well. It's like, if we do this for you, you need to learn how to maintain it, or you know, you need to build it yourself. We give you the materials, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really great, and it fits in so well with the frustration that this entrepreneur had. So maybe we'll go to the next slide, and I can tell you a little bit about the solution that they've come up with, which has a mix of the two things: the thing that you're frustrated about, but also the challenge that you noted. So the reality right now, about 4 million people in Tanzania don't have access to safe water, and there have been plenty of donor-sponsored, government-sponsored programs to support access to safe drinking water that have just not worked for the exact reasons, Suzanne, that you laid out, that they're really kind of plug and play. Let's just drop something on a community. They're not taking the time to understand for each community why they may not have access to water will be different for different reasons. Some are coastal communities, some are mountainous communities, some face different seasonal conditions. So the entrepreneur, in fact, found a solution from a franchise model. So this is where it comes in a little kind of a model that was brought in from outside. So there's a model called Majijibu, and they have franchises across Africa. I believe they are in 7 African countries currently. And because it's a franchise model, it's decentralized. So what that means is that the delivery can be tailored to the local community and can be tailored to the needs and the dynamics of the local community. And the way it works is that you can see this truck in the photo. They have large refillable water bottles that the community members can keep in their homes. And the lifetime of those plastic bottles is incredibly long, such that a recycling company wanted to partner with them to take off their recyclable plastics, and they just didn't have enough plastic for them because they're still in use. And so that's been a very effective use, because plastic is a valuable material, and it can have a strong purpose if used and kept in use effectively. So the point of this model is that each micro franchise has a water production unit, which they then repay through royalties from the sales of the water. And so I think the point around decentralization is incredibly important, because it allows the communities to interpret and use it in a way that makes sense for them. So I'm very happy to hear any thoughts or criticisms or encouragement that others hear about this. Feel free to put it in the chat. I can see Suzanne has been putting information in the chat, but happy to have anyone unmute and share their thoughts.
I have a question, if I may. How do they manage the water bottles? So do they refill them in the homes of people? So do they stay with a household, or does the household return them? And who's cleaning them?
So they are refilled by the company. I don't know the detail actually about the cleaning. That's a good one to verify. But then they return the bottles filled. So they're not filled in the homes. They're filled by by the micro franchise.
In addition to that is when bottles are returned, they are checked for any cracks or misuse. Say people went to use it for milk or something other than water, then those bottles are not used for water again, but then you'd have to pay a fee to get a new bottle. So the company takes that responsibility of ensuring that the bottles are in good shape before they are dropped off at their place.
And what that's meant is that these have been able to be used between 200 and 400 times. So rather than a single-use bottle, so that's a radical difference in terms of stretching the lifetime of the bottle. Debs, is there anything you want to add aside from that to this model? What makes you excited by this business model?
I'm excited about it because apart from providing the water and potable water, they're also creating business opportunities for the locals, which is this. So local people are able to have that because of the franchise model. They're able to have access to business in their own small way, and that's also interesting to know on my side. And I think that is one point of the circular economy, to be able to reach out to everyone, to create jobs, to bring everyone on board and ensure that everybody is getting, can I say, a piece of the cake in the right way? For lack of a better word. Sure. Okay. So
Awesome, Debs. Do you share a bit more detail now about some of the findings from the research we've done? So we're sharing specific case studies, but actually more broadly from the cases that we've seen, what the trends that we started to notice are.
Yeah. So just like Joanna has said, from the reports that we did, from the research that we did, this was the insights that we collected and key areas that we collected from the report. And we were able to collect about 70 cases. We interviewed 23 of those case studies. And when we interviewed them, we were able to come up with these main themes from the solutions, the circular economy solutions that people were initiating or people were using for business. The first one was focused on waste over design. So a lot of people we realized were trying to use waste that was already existing or existing waste to design new products or new materials. And that was about 16 out of the 23 of the cases were focusing on waste over design. And instead of focusing on how to take out the waste from the product or how to take out waste from the initial stages of the product. And I'd just like to make this input that this session on RISE is about celebrating Africa. And we are not saying this is what is happening in the whole of Africa, or we are just saying this is what we noticed from the reports that we have collected. So the next one is vital processes were occurring outside the continent. I wouldn't want to go through all of that individually, but I see we can all see what is going on. And it's interesting to know these are kind of peculiar to the African space and the African entrepreneurs that we spoke to. So before we go ahead, I'd like to do a quick poll to know which of these elements that we have all heard of in our interactions in the African space. So if you've heard of any of these trends, I'd like to know which ones we have heard of. So the poll will be up in a jiffy.
Debs, I think it's interesting what you were saying about vital processes taking place outside the continent. And I think it's frustrating that some of the things, it's frustrating where people put value. Do you see what I mean? So people refer to value addition and say value addition is outside of the continent. And they're undervaluing the value and the wealth that's on the continent. And so I think there's definitely some reframes that need to happen on many sides there, because the continent is this incredible wealth of resources. And I think we really need to move away from this extractive model And I love what the entrepreneurs that we are working with are doing, because they're really taking things into their own hands.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we have found some of the entrepreneurs trying to improvise and use what is available to produce what they think needs to be provided. And that is the line we all need to start towing as entrepreneurs, to start thinking of how can we be innovative, to use what we already have to provide solutions to the challenges that we have. I see.
Well, to give an example, Debs, if thinking about, we've seen several companies, you talk there about equipment improvisation. We've seen several companies who just could not import the equipment they needed because the crazy import costs, the delays, the duties, the fees for importation. And it made their business model completely unsustainable if they were to import. And so instead, they built their own machines. And yes, they may not have the perfect machine, but it's incredible what they were able to do with the resources they had around them. And we see that with pyramid recycling, for example. They're creating construction materials out of waste plastic to avoid deforestation. We saw that with Coleco Wear, where they're making shoes from locally available waste materials. So, we're seeing some amazing entrepreneurs and the ingenuity with.
Yeah. And it's also exciting, the entrepreneurs that are taking innovation into their hands and trying to make from scratch what they wanted to produce. And with this, I'm talking about Arena Recycling and Helena just trying some kind of research to design her building material and bricks to be able to build. And that's another interesting, daring entrepreneur we have here, a young lady who thinks, okay, what do we do with this plastics? And she starts her own research, experimenting, and she was able to come up with this interesting innovation. So I think a lot of opportunities exist, and we have to see those opportunities and look at our context and then provide solutions that relates to our context. I think we've been talking, but the polls have ended.
Yeah, let's hit.
Sure. So interesting. You have a lot of people speaking about barriers to scaling. Right. A lot of people have seen barriers to scaling. I guess that is also true. But from our research, focus on waste was more, but barriers depends on where these entrepreneurs are located and what they thought of as resource or not. Yeah. All right, thank you.
I say something about the barriers.
You're welcome, Louise.
Please do.
I'm just thinking about, industrialization is always what scales up. And here we're dealing with individual pockets of ideas and creativity and design, but we have a huge unemployment situation. And the barriers to scaling is because we've been dependent on machines for so long. What we need is to get our hands back into the dirt and make things and use our ability to create. I think it's linked.
Interesting to know. We could relate that to the fact that circular economy is a doing economy, and it needs people to get their hands into the work and dig out what needs to be done. Thanks, Liz, for that addition. We'll just get on with the third and final key elements we have for the day, which is using waste as resource. We've already seen a lot on that. So we want to, when we talk about using waste as resource, I'm sure a lot of us have seen examples, but then we want to think about the little waste that is created, or after there is waste from our production or from whatever material or solutions that we've done, what do we do with it? Do we just leave them to choke our gutters, to cause harm to the environment? Or what do we do with it? And this element is trying to tell us that we can use waste as secondary resource to make other products. It doesn't have to be called waste because it is also a resource. We can also reuse these things, and we can also recycle them. This happens best when we collaborate and we find areas where byproducts from one production can be used in another, so that we are not producing or creating waste in the cycle, but we are rather using, depending on each other to ensure that things are not going waste. To talk more about this element, we are going to go into a case study that we saw in South Africa, which is into the electronic waste. So this company was birthed from their mother company, and they noticed that from their operations, they had a lot of empty printer cartridges that were piling up because of the operations they were doing. And they were thinking of what could we do, because we have all these printer cartridges filling our room. So what do we do with it? They also realized that most of these printer cartridges end up in the landfill and they contaminate the other waste streams. And but they have other they end up in the waste stream and they contaminate other waste streams. But they also notice that there is lack of employment for disabled people in the community because they lack education, and so they don't have these opportunities to get job opportunities. So they decided to create a solution. We're going to go into our breakout rooms like we've already been doing, and we discuss which solution is the best option for this company. We have the solutions in the Word documents. The first solution they thought of is to incinerate could they incinerate the cartridge to generate energy, or could they refill this cartridge from homemade printer ink? Are they also able to certify disabled women as printer engineers so that they're able to use the old cartridges to build new printers? Or is there any other solution they could think of? If our breakout room is ready, then we'll just jump into the breakout rooms and we discuss what solution we think is best for this company. So, see you in 8 minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. Deborah, are you back? Would anyone like to share any of the discussions they had? I know in our group, there was definitely a hesitancy to choose a solution. We had quite a lot of back and forth. Did anyone come up with anything?
So I would love if someone else, Callisto, we have Yasmin, if anyone else would share. So Joanna, interesting enough, Susan just mentioned the company we were using, and I'm like, no, you can do that to us. So Susan smoked us out and got the company.
I'm so sorry that I burst your bubble, Deborah.
Well, no, I think it's possible though, because all of these companies, they're not perfect. They don't have necessarily the perfect solution. So it's even fine to talk about, how, to what extent are they circular? Could they be doing things differently or better? Is this the best solution? So no worries.
Sure. If no one is speaking, maybe Susan would share what.
One person
in someone is saying hi.
Hi.
Hello.
In our group, we had very interesting discussions about reusing printer cartridges and how we can use them in a different manner. And there was this example of like having them as decorative items or using them as like ice block containers and that type of thing. So we can just batch them up and completely reuse them. They don't necessarily have to be used in like a printer or printing mechanism. They can actually be used for something completely out of the printing functions.
That's interesting to know. Other users apart from what they've already been catered to do. That's interesting.
I would be a bit bit scared to use it for anything where you put edible stuff into it. But yeah, you look, the company that you talk about, I know them quite well. They are based in South Africa. They work with disabled people, and they do a great job in refurbishing and refilling cartridges. But it's limited to a certain couple of brands which are refurbishable. And you know, there's still a lot of cartridges that are designed for the dump. So I think it's a combination of approaches. One should definitely start raising the pressure on the producers that have just bad design. That means that they don't lend themselves to refurbishment. And hopefully extended producer responsibility as a principle will really take care of that, at least in South Africa now, because now producers have actually, for electronics and all the peripherals, have to take care, you know, of end of life performance of what they put on the markets. And it will be interesting to see how things will change in the next few months in South Africa.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. Should we show the next? Given Suzanne's given it all away.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. Since you've done justice to the case study, we were speaking about Greenable, and they use the end of life, the empty printer cartridges, to they extract the valuable materials from them, which are used for other products. So right now they have this computer stand or laptop stand that they are producing, which is called Easy Go. So this is produced from the excess plastic or the waste plastic that they collect and they extract from the printer cartridges. They also extract other materials such as metals and other materials from the printer cartridges, which are used in the recycling. They are recycled and used for other products. So that's an interesting case study. I think the interesting part of this company is the business model that they are employing. And Joanna, I know you'd love their business model. Do you want to talk more about what they do?
Yeah, I mean, I can try to do it justice. So one of the things that they've been very savvy about is they have used some of the broad-based Black economic empowerment rules to subsidies and tax breaks to be able to be quite creative in how they capture value. So one of the ways they do it, because in South Africa there is huge encouragement for companies to employ broad-based Black economic workers. That doesn't make sense, but you hear what I'm saying. So they are scored against the number of women and the number of different categories of workers that they employ. And so because companies may have been hesitant to do so in the past, or because they have highly technical roles which they weren't able to fill, they have been able to use Greenable as an employer. So in fact, Greenable doesn't employ some of the women they work with. They actually outsource the employment to these companies so that they can benefit from that and also generate revenue by being an employment service. And so I think, you know, there's lots of things that we can say about the legislation and about the BBBEE codes, but it does create opportunities for organizations like this to create value. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And I think, as Susan was saying, there is, I think it's 12 million cartridges are imported, and it's really important, they are imported into South Africa each year, and less than 10% of them are recycled. So materials are being brought into the country, and the country doesn't necessarily have the ability to process them. And so there's a massive issue at the design phase where products are really being designed, as Suzanne said, for the dump. And then these countries have to deal with them. And we see huge challenges with this around the world. And I agree that we need to have a rising up against this. And it's great that these creative solutions exist, but showing how even with a creative solution like this, they're still not able to process all of the cartridges because of the way they've been designed. I think it's a huge indication that that more work needs to be done by those putting these products onto the market. So that's something that I get particularly frustrated about.
Thinking, if I can interject, I'm thinking that in this day and age, though, we shouldn't be printing that much. We don't need to print that much. So are we not going to reduce our printing demands at some point?
Anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yes, is the short answer. So Xerox, which I'm sure is present in South Africa, but is pretty widespread in the world. They have a very well established part of their business, which is devoted to basically refurbishing the multifunction machines. So the seriously big photocopiers, printers that you would see in office contexts. But I understand from a presentation recently is that what they've seen, particularly during the last year with COVID and people working from home, is that actually the volume that's being printed has just plummeted dramatically. But more generally, yes, I think with dematerialization, there's less reliance on printed paper. There's maybe this is maybe a market that is moving in different directions.
Thank you, Hugo. Even though you're seeing Joanna beg. Yeah, thanks for your addition. So I see Joanna is off her, but having discussed all of these things, and since we're celebrating what Africa is and what we already have in the space, we would like to share like the key or some strong bullet points for designers. And I just want us to keep in mind that we are all designers. So Joanna, do you want to share which of these bullets you find interesting and inspiring?
Which is the most one to me? I think I am going to say it's got to be make solutions relevant to the local context. I think it picks up a little bit on what Suzanne said earlier. Just imposing solutions from the outside, coming, expensive consultant, like, oh, why are you people not just using this technology that I've brought for you? I think it completely misses the point of why some of these challenges exist. And we had a fascinating conversation in one of our groups about really sitting with people and understanding, how they relate. For example, in this context, it was water, how they relate to water and what their experience is with water and even the spiritual connection they have with water. And until you really sit with people and build community engagement around these issues, I think solutions are always just, band-aids that are being stuck on and opportunities are missed. How about you, Debs? Which one do you think is the most important?
Since you've gone for what I would have said, I would say, beginning of the session, we had few people choosing collaboration. But I feel that is something we need to talk about more. Circular economy cannot be achieved by an individual. And so we need to think of where and how do we collaborate to make solutions possible, because it is a joint effort and one person cannot get us a circular economy or one person cannot get us to the circular economy that we want to get to. So let's think about collaboration whenever we are thinking about any solution. Who can we bring on board and how can we make the solution much easier for people around us, and how can people make input to make the solution work better? So that's the one I'll speak about.
I think it's really interesting. One of the questions I ask at the moment, Debs, is can you talk about a circular business? Because a business on its own cannot be circular. It's the enabling environment and its suppliers, its customers that enable it to be circular. So I don't know that we can actually talk about that. But I do think that you mentioning collaboration is a great segue to talk about the organization that we're collaborating with at the moment, which is Circle Economy. It's they're the ones that have the 8 key elements that we've mentioned to you. And it's been really great to partner with another organization in the work that we're doing, because it really makes us feel like we're not alone. And we have another organization that's also inspired and excited alongside us to continue this work. So we'd love to hand over to, I don't know if is it Julia or Emisha? Julia, who's with us today, who will share a little bit about Circle Economy's Knowledge Hub and where you can find more case studies.
Yeah, so thank you, John and Deborah. So hi everyone, we are Emisha and Julia, and we are currently interns at Circle Economy, and we would like to introduce you to our Knowledge Hub, where you can find cases of many African and worldwide circular economy policies, initiatives, and businesses.
Yeah, hi. So it is also where you can find very interesting and insightful cases from footprints. which I can really recommend reading. And the platform is created to follow the Wikipedia style, where everyone can contribute, everyone can edit, and everyone can curate. So everyone can bring then all their own expertise and knowledge to the table, and also benefit from others' knowledge around the whole world. So it also makes the searching for examples in the circular economy in action much easier, because we have filtering options for key elements that we have been discussing throughout this session, countries and policies. So we welcome everyone to take a look and be a part of this platform.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Julia and Amisha. We can all find case studies on the Knowledge Hub. We can add, we can all curate, just like Deval said. So before we end the session, I know we've been chatting through, been asking questions, but I'd like to open if anyone has any specific question that we want to ask before we close the session. That would be great. So if there are any questions you want to ask specifically to the slides or the discussions we've already done.
I'd love to hear people's questions. I'd also love to ask a question, which is, we've been trialing this format whereby we got everyone to think about the problem before we shared the solution the company had come up with. And I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this as an approach to have a session. Was it engaging? Was it enjoyable? Is there a different way you would have preferred it to be done? We're constantly trying to work out better ways to truly engage people on this topic.
All right. So we can just go for the final poll before we leave.
Thanks, Susan.
Yeah, and as we take the poll, Joanna has already mentioned we have the ambition of collecting 500 case studies from the African continent, and we welcome anyone who would like to partner with us on the project. We are doing other projects on the back of the reports that we've written, the case studies that we've collected, trying to delve deeper and build a metric that companies on the African continent can measure the impact of their circularity or measure resources that they are using. And so you're welcome to collaborate with us. We have our links. You can send us an email. If you have any case study you want to add to our existing case studies, we have the link to the questionnaire, which will be dropped in the chat. And we can also add that to the questionnaire. You're welcome to let us know any case study that you've already heard of that we don't have, because we want to create a platform for these initiatives in the African space, get them to tell the story in their own way, and to get people to see what is happening on the continent. Okay. Thanks, Susan, thanks for your feedback. It was nice having you in the session.
Yeah, and I would just like to say thank you to everyone for their input in the sessions. We had some really thoughtful ideas. The whole point of this is to gather ideas and thoughts that I would not, that any of us would not have come up with on our own, and to exchange and to have our mindsets broadened. That's the point of circular economy. It's about diversity. It's about coming together. And so I really thank everyone for taking the time to share some thoughts and words. There's definitely some things that are like trickling in my head now that I know that I'll be thinking of for several days, and that will impact my outlook. So thank you so much.
Okay. I've seen someone says this session could have been more engaging. I would have loved to know who that is and what their feedback would be personally. You can get in touch through our email. Would love to speak more. And those who have case studies they would like to share, kindly get in touch through our email or get onto the questionnaire and other cases. We'd love to know these cases too. Oh, Alex, nice. I'm glad to hear that. Hi, Rose. Thanks for that feedback. On that note, I think we've come to the end of the session, and we are glad you all came. And thanks for your input, and we thank you for all your input and all that you shared. Bye bye. Enjoy the rest of the session.